Rewire your brain without miracles. 7 minutes of non-judgmental awareness. Husserl, Jung. The relentless hum of modern life often drowns out the quiet whispers of our own minds, leaving us adrift in a sea of distractions, anxieties, and the nagging feeling that we're missing something vital. We're bombarded with constant notifications, the curated perfection of social media, and the ceaseless pressure to achieve, to be more, to do more. In this cacophony, our inner landscape becomes a battlefield, a place where thoughts clash, emotions surge, and a pervasive sense of dissatisfaction takes root. We yearn for a stillness that seems impossibly out of reach, a clarity that the noise of the world actively obscures. Many of us have tried various methods to find peace, to regain control, to simply feel better, often with fleeting results. We seek external fixes, quick start guides, or miraculous transformations, hoping for an overnight cure to the persistent ache of disconnection. But what if the most profound rewiring of our brains doesn't require grand gestures or elusive breakthroughs? What if the key lies not in adding more, but in discerning what's already present, in observing without immediate judgment? This journey we are about to embark upon is not about achieving a state of perpetual bliss or eradicating all discomfort. Instead, it's about cultivating a radical form of awareness, a gentle yet powerful practice that can fundamentally alter our relationship with our own minds and the world around us. We will explore how a specific yet universally applicable approach to observation can begin to untangle the knots of our habitual thinking and feeling patterns. This is an invitation to step back from the constant striving and instead to simply be with what is, allowing for a deeper understanding and a more resilient inner peace to emerge organically. Consider the overwhelming pressure to constantly fix ourselves, to eliminate negative thoughts, to banish anxiety, and to achieve a state of perfect equanimity. This very striving often becomes another source of stress. We judge our thoughts as bad, our emotions as unacceptable, and our internal experiences as wrong. This judgment creates a secondary layer of suffering, a resistance to what is already occurring within us. We become entangled in a cycle of trying to escape our own minds, inadvertently strengthening the very patterns we wish to dissolve. This is where the wisdom of centuries past offers a potent antidote. Think about the sheer volume of mental energy we expend resisting, analyzing, and trying to change our immediate experience. We are so accustomed to reacting, to labeling, to categorizing everything that arises within our consciousness that we rarely allow ourselves the space to simply witness it. This constant engagement, this immediate judgment, is like trying to clear a turbulent river by throwing stones into it. It only stirs the waters further. The promise of a truly transformative shift lies not in forceful intervention, but in a profound act of gentle observation. It is about recognizing that within the ebb and flow of our inner world, there is a natural intelligence, a capacity for self-regulation that is often suppressed by our own critical gaze. The path forward is not about denying or suppressing what arises, but about learning to hold it with a different quality of attention, an attention that is open, curious, and crucially free from the immediate need to label it as good or bad, right or wrong. This is the fertile ground where genuine psychological and spiritual growth can begin to flourish, unhindered by the weight of our own imposed expectations. We often approach our inner lives as if they were machines to be repaired, faulty mechanisms to be tinkered with until they function correctly. This mechanical view, while useful in the external world, proves deeply insufficient when applied to the intricate tapestry of human consciousness. We are not simply a collection of gears and levers. We are dynamic, evolving beings whose internal experiences are fluid and interconnected. When we encounter a difficult emotion, our instinct is to immediately diagnose it, to assign it a cause, and to formulate a plan to eradicate it. This approach, while seemingly logical, often bypasses the deeper wisdom embedded within the experience itself. It's like a doctor who, upon seeing a fever, immediately focuses on lowering the temperature without investigating the underlying infection. The fever, in this analogy, is the symptom, the emotional distress, but the true work lies in understanding the root cause, which often involves our habitual patterns of thought, our unresolved experiences, and our deeply ingrained beliefs about ourselves and the world. The relentless pursuit of eliminating discomfort can blind us to the invaluable insights that these very experiences are trying to impart. We are so focused on the problem that we miss the potential lesson. This is where a profound shift in perspective becomes not just beneficial, but essential. The invitation here is to move away from the idea of fixing our minds and towards the practice of witnessing them, with a curiosity that seeks understanding rather than immediate resolution. It's about recognizing that our internal landscape is not a static problem to be solved, but a living, breathing entity that communicates with us through its various expressions, and that learning to listen to this communication is the first step towards genuine transformation. The modern human condition is often characterized by a deep-seated anxiety, a gnawing sense of being out of control, and a pervasive feeling of fragmentation. We yearn for a sense of wholeness, a connection to something larger than ourselves, and a clear understanding of our purpose. Yet our daily lives are frequently dominated by the relentless pursuit of external validation, the endless cycle of desires, and the fear of not measuring up. This internal struggle manifests as stress, burnout, and a profound disconnection from our authentic selves. We are taught to analyze, to strategize, to control every variable, but this very control often leads to a tightening, a constriction of our inner freedom. The more we try to force our experiences into predefined boxes, the more we feel trapped by them. This is where ancient wisdom, often distilled through the lens of philosophical and psychological inquiry, offers a potent counterpoint. Imagine a gardener who, upon seeing a weed, immediately tries to rip it out by the roots, often damaging the surrounding soil and the delicate network of life within it. A more attuned gardener, however, would observe the weed, understand its place in the ecosystem, and perhaps even recognize what the soil might be lacking that allowed the weed to thrive. This subtle shift from forceful intervention to gentle observation is at the heart of the transformative practice we will explore. It's about understanding that our internal world, much like a garden, has its own rhythms and its own inherent wisdom. By learning to simply be present with what arises, the thoughts, the emotions, the sensations, without the immediate impulse to judge or to change them, we create the conditions for a deeper healing and a more profound sense of peace to emerge. This is not about resignation, but about a courageous engagement with reality as it is, allowing for a more authentic and resilient way of being to take root. We are caught in a relentless current, pulled along by the demands of our external lives, the chatter of our inner dialogues, and the constant pressure to perform. In this ceaseless motion, we often lose touch with the quiet hum of our own being, the subtle currents of awareness that lie beneath the surface of our everyday consciousness. The desire for a more meaningful existence, for a deeper connection, and for a sense of inner peace is a universal longing. Yet the path to achieving it often seems obscured by the very noise we seek to escape. We are conditioned to believe that transformation requires grand gestures, radical upheavals, or the acquisition of new skills and knowledge. We look outward for solutions, seeking external validation or the perfect technique to fix what we perceive as broken within ourselves. This external focus, however, often leads us further away from the very source of the peace and clarity we seek. The most profound shifts, the most enduring transformations, rarely come from adding more to our lives, but from stripping away the unnecessary, from learning to discern the essential from the ephemeral. It is about cultivating a quality of attention that is not driven by the need to change or to control, but by a simple, open curiosity. This is the essence of the journey we are about to undertake, a gentle exploration of how to cultivate a profound inner stillness, not by eliminating our thoughts or emotions, but by learning to observe them with a new kind of awareness. This awareness, free from the immediate burden of judgment, offers a pathway to understanding ourselves more deeply, to healing old wounds, and to living with a greater sense of presence and purpose. It is a recognition that the most powerful tools for rewiring our brains and enriching our lives are not external, but reside within the quiet, observant space of our own consciousness, waiting to be discovered. The inherent human drive for control, for mastery over our circumstances and our internal states, is a powerful force. We meticulously plan our days, strategize our careers, and attempt to engineer our emotions, all in an effort to avoid discomfort and secure a sense of predictable well-being. Yet, paradoxically, this very insistence on control often tightens its grip, leading to a brittle rigidity rather than genuine resilience. Consider the experience of trying to hold onto water with a clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. Similarly, our desperate attempts to suppress unwanted thoughts or emotions can amplify them, turning a fleeting feeling into a consuming obsession. This is where the concept of non-judgmental awareness, as explored by figures like Edmund Husserl in his Phenomenology, offers a radical alternative. Husserl's method of epoche, or bracketing, invites us to suspend our ingrained assumptions and biases, to observe phenomena as they present themselves without immediately categorizing or evaluating them. It's about stepping back from the automatic reactivity that characterizes much of our mental lives. Instead of asking, is this thought good or bad, or how can I get rid of this feeling, we shift to a stance of pure observation. What is this thought? What does it feel like in my body? What are its characteristics? This deliberate act of stepping back, of creating a space between stimulus and response, is the fertile ground where true understanding and lasting change can begin to blossom. It's not about passive acceptance of suffering, but about an active, conscious engagement with our experience in its raw, unadulterated form, which ultimately disarms the power of reactivity. Building on this phenomenological foundation, Carl Jung's work provides crucial insights into the unconscious forces that often drive our judgments and our relentless pursuit of control. Jung understood that many of our conscious desires for order and predictability are attempts to suppress or deny the chaotic, instinctual energies that reside in the psyche's depths. When we rigidly reject certain aspects of ourselves, our perceived flaws, our darker impulses, our vulnerabilities, these disowned parts don't disappear. Instead, they often fester in the unconscious, exerting a subtle but powerful influence on our behavior, our relationships, and our overall sense of well-being. They can manifest as irrational fears, inexplicable anxieties, or compulsive patterns that seem to operate outside of our conscious will. Jung's emphasis on integrating the shadow, on acknowledging and understanding these disowned aspects of ourselves, is directly relevant to non-judgmental awareness. By bringing these hidden elements into conscious observation without the immediate need to condemn them, we begin to loosen their grip. Imagine a person who is terrified of public speaking because of a deep-seated fear of judgment. Instead of avoiding the stage, non-judgmental awareness would encourage them to observe the physical sensations of anxiety, the racing heart, the clammy hands, and the accompanying thoughts. I'm going to fail. People will laugh. Not as absolute truths, but as phenomena to be witnessed. This observation, stripped of immediate condemnation, allows the raw energy of the fear to be seen for what it is, a collection of sensations and thoughts rather than an insurmountable reality. Consequently, the power it holds begins to diminish, paving the way for a more courageous and authentic engagement with the situation. Furthermore, the practical application of non-judgmental awareness in daily life involves cultivating a specific kind of attention, a mindful presence that is both gentle and unwavering. It's not about emptying the mind or achieving a state of blissful detachment, which are often unattainable and can lead to frustration. Rather, it's about recognizing that thoughts and emotions are transient phenomena, like clouds passing across the sky. They arise, they exist for a time, and then they dissolve. The key is to observe them without clinging to them, without identifying with them, and crucially, without judging them as inherently good or bad. Consider a moment when you find yourself caught in a loop of self-criticism after making a mistake. Instead of immediately berating yourself, a practice of non-judgmental awareness would involve noticing the critical thoughts as they appear. I'm so stupid. I always mess things up. Then you would gently acknowledge these thoughts without engaging in a battle with them. You might silently say to yourself, there's that critical thought again, or I'm noticing a feeling of frustration. This simple act of observation, without the added layer of self-recrimination, begins to loosen the grip of the criticism. It allows you to see the thought for what it is, a mental event, rather than an absolute truth about your worth. Consequently, the emotional charge associated with the criticism begins to dissipate, creating space for a more constructive response, perhaps one of learning and self-compassion. This is not about condoning the mistake, but about transforming the internal response to it, fostering a more resilient and less self-punishing approach to life's inevitable stumbles. Conversely, the absence of this practice can lead to a state of chronic internal conflict where we are perpetually at war with ourselves. When we habitually judge our inner experiences, we create a schism within our own consciousness. We try to push away what we deem undesirable, but these suppressed elements often find other, more disruptive ways to surface. This internal division consumes vast amounts of mental and emotional energy, leaving us feeling drained, fragmented, and disconnected. Think of a river that is dammed. The water builds up, creating immense pressure, and eventually it will find a way to break through, often in a destructive flood. Our own suppressed emotions and judgments act similarly. When we refuse to acknowledge or observe them without condemnation, they accumulate, creating an internal pressure that can manifest as sudden outbursts of anger, unexplained sadness, or even physical symptoms. This is precisely why the gentle, non-judgmental observation is so crucial. It acts not as a dam, but as a channel, allowing the natural flow of our inner experience to move through us without resistance or judgment. It's about recognizing that all aspects of our inner world, the joy and the sorrow, the clarity and the confusion, the peace and the agitation, are valid parts of the human experience. By embracing this totality, by observing it all with a curious and compassionate gaze, we begin to heal the internal divisions and cultivate a profound sense of integration and wholeness. This is the essence of rewiring our brains, not by force, but by a radical act of gentle, unwavering presence. The practice of non-judgmental awareness, while seemingly simple, offers a profound recalibration of our internal compass. It shifts our focus from what we are experiencing, the content of our thoughts, the intensity of our emotions, to how we are experiencing it. This subtle yet powerful reorientation is akin to changing the lens through which we view our inner landscape. Instead of being consumed by the drama of the narrative, we become the quiet observer of the unfolding play. This detachment is not an act of disinterest, but one of profound engagement, allowing us to see the underlying patterns and dynamics that often remain hidden when we are caught in the throes of emotional reactivity. Consider the habitual tendency to catastrophize when faced with a setback. We immediately jump to the worst-case scenario, projecting future failures and amplifying present difficulties. Non-judgmental awareness invites us to notice this tendency without immediately succumbing to it. It's about observing the thought, "This is a disaster," and recognizing it as a particular type of mental formation, rather than an objective truth. We can then inquire with gentle curiosity, what is the evidence for this being a disaster? What other possibilities exist? This inquiry, conducted from a place of detached observation, interrupts the automatic cascade of negative thinking, creating space for a more balanced and realistic assessment of the situation. This process is not about suppressing the initial worry, but about preventing it from spiraling into an overwhelming crisis, thereby conserving our vital energy for more constructive problem-solving, or even for simply accepting what cannot be changed. Another crucial layer to this practice involves understanding its impact on our relationship with past grievances and future anxieties. We often remain tethered to unresolved hurts, replaying past interactions and harboring resentments that poison our present moments. Conversely, the future can become a canvas for our fears, where we anticipate potential problems and experience the emotional fallout of events that may never occur. Non-judgmental awareness offers a way to loosen these anchors. When a painful memory surfaces, instead of immediately succumbing to the associated emotions of anger or sadness, we can observe the memory itself and the emotional texture it evokes with a degree of separation. We can acknowledge, here is the memory of that argument, and then notice the sensations in the body that accompany it, perhaps a tightness in the chest or a clenching in the jaw. By observing these physical manifestations without judgment, we begin to disentangle the memory from its overwhelming emotional charge. Similarly, when future anxieties arise, such as worry about an upcoming presentation, we can observe the anxious thoughts, "What if I freeze?" and the physical sensations of nervousness without immediately identifying with them as definitive predictions. This creates a psychological buffer, allowing us to acknowledge the concern without being consumed by it, thereby freeing up our mental resources to focus on preparation or to find solace in the present moment, recognizing that the future is, by its very nature, uncertain and not yet manifest. Furthermore, the cultivation of non-judgmental awareness profoundly influences our capacity for genuine empathy and connection with others. When we are constantly evaluating and judging our own internal experiences, this critical tendency often spills over into our interactions with people. We may unconsciously label others, categorize their behaviors, and react based on preconceived notions rather than open perception. However, by developing the skill of observing our own thoughts and emotions without immediate condemnation, we begin to develop a greater capacity for accepting the full spectrum of human experience, both within ourselves and in others. When confronted with someone else's difficult behavior or expressed emotion, instead of immediately reacting with judgment or defensiveness, we can pause. We can observe our own internal reaction, perhaps annoyance or frustration, and then, with a spirit of curiosity, attempt to understand the other person's experience. This doesn't mean condoning harmful actions, but rather it allows for a more compassionate and less reactive response. For instance, if a colleague is unusually curt, instead of immediately assuming they are being rude, a non-judgmental observer might consider, "They seem to be having a difficult day. What might be going on for them?" This shift from judgment to curiosity opens the door for more constructive dialogue and deeper interpersonal understanding, fostering relationships built on a foundation of acceptance rather than constant evaluation. Conversely, the absence of this mindful observation can lead to a pervasive sense of isolation, even when surrounded by people. When we are locked in our own internal judgments, we create an invisible barrier between ourselves and the world. We may appear present on the surface, but internally we are engaged in a constant process of evaluating, comparing, and critiquing, which prevents us from truly connecting with others or appreciating the richness of our immediate surroundings. Consider the experience of being at a social gathering, yet feeling disconnected because your mind is preoccupied with judging your own appearance, comparing yourself to others, or replaying an earlier conversation. This internal commentary prevents you from engaging authentically with the people around you, from noticing the nuances of their expressions, or from genuinely appreciating the shared moment. By practicing non-judgmental awareness, we can begin to dismantle these internal barriers. When such self-critical or evaluative thoughts arise, we can gently acknowledge them, and then consciously redirect our attention to our external environment. The sounds, the sights, the interactions, and to our internal experience of being present in that moment without the overlay of constant judgment. This practice allows us to be more fully available to life, fostering a sense of belonging and genuine connection that transcends the superficial. The challenge of living a life infused with conscious awareness often encounters a significant hurdle: the insidious nature of habituated cognitive biases. These are not mere quirks of personality, they are deeply ingrained patterns of thought that unconsciously shape our perceptions and decisions, often leading us astray from objective reality. One pervasive bias is confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out, interpret and recall information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring or downplaying evidence that contradicts them. This creates an echo chamber within our minds, reinforcing our assumptions and making it exceptionally difficult to entertain alternative viewpoints. Consequently, when we practice non-judgmental awareness, we are not just observing thoughts, we are also learning to observe the mechanisms by which these thoughts are formed and perpetuated. This involves recognizing when we are selectively filtering information or giving undue weight to data that supports our current stance. For instance, imagine you have a strong belief that a particular colleague is untrustworthy. When they perform a minor error, your mind immediately flags it as further proof of their untrustworthiness, overlooking the numerous instances where they have acted competently and reliably. Applying non-judgmental awareness here means noticing this leap in logic, observing the internal narrative that connects the minor error to the grand conclusion of untrustworthiness, and acknowledging the bias at play, rather than accepting the conclusion as fact. This act of metacognition, of observing the process of our own thinking, is a vital step in dismantling these deeply entrenched cognitive traps. Another significant bias that non-judgmental awareness helps to illuminate is the anchoring effect, where we rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered, the anchor, when making decisions, even if that anchor is arbitrary or irrelevant. This can manifest in various aspects of life, from financial negotiations to personal evaluations. If the first impression of a situation or person is negative, subsequent information, even if positive, may struggle to dislodge that initial anchor. The practice of non-judgmental awareness encourages us to actively identify when such an anchor might be influencing our perception. It prompts us to question the origin and validity of our initial impressions. Consider a situation where you are evaluating a new project proposal. If the initial presentation is somewhat dry or uninspiring, the anchoring effect might lead you to undervalue the substance of the proposal itself. Non-judgmental awareness would involve noticing this initial inclination to dismiss the idea based on the delivery, and then consciously shifting your attention to the actual content, the data presented, and the potential merits, regardless of the initial presentation's shortcomings. This deliberate act of setting aside the initial, potentially misleading anchor allows for a more balanced and objective assessment, preventing us from making suboptimal decisions based on superficial cues. Furthermore, the concept of availability heuristic, the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that are more easily recalled in memory, often due to their vividness or recency, presents a unique challenge that non-judgmental awareness can address. We might overestimate the risk of a rare but highly publicized event, like a plane crash, while underestimating the more common, less dramatic risks, such as car accidents. This heuristic can significantly distort our perception of reality and lead to disproportionate fear or concern. When practicing non-judgmental awareness, we learn to recognize when our assessment of risk or probability is being driven by easily recalled, but statistically less probable, events. For example, if you are hesitant to travel by air due to vivid memories of news reports about a recent aviation incident, non-judgmental awareness allows you to acknowledge the fear associated with those vivid images without letting them dictate your decision. It encourages a gentle inquiry into the statistical reality of air travel safety versus other modes of transportation. By observing the emotional pull of the vivid memory without succumbing to it, you create space for a more rational evaluation, ultimately leading to more informed and less fear-driven choices. This is not about suppressing the memory or the emotion, but about observing their influence and choosing not to be solely governed by them. Conversely, a lack of this discerning awareness can lead to a state of constant, low-grade anxiety rooted in distorted threat perception. When we are habitually influenced by biases like confirmation bias or the availability heuristic, our internal alarm system can become overly sensitive, misinterpreting neutral or even benign stimuli as potential threats. This constant vigilance is exhausting and significantly erodes our capacity for peace and presence. It's like having a smoke detector that goes off every time someone burns toast. While it's designed for safety, its constant false alarms create a state of perpetual unease. Non-judgmental awareness acts as a calibration mechanism for this internal alarm system. By observing the thoughts and feelings that arise in response to everyday events, we begin to discern which are based on genuine risk and which are simply the product of ingrained biases or overactive imaginations. This discernment allows us to turn down the volume on unnecessary anxiety, freeing up mental and emotional energy that can then be directed towards more productive and fulfilling pursuits. This process is not about becoming complacent or ignoring genuine dangers, but about developing a more accurate and nuanced perception of risk, thereby fostering a more balanced and peaceful inner state. Another subtle yet powerful bias that non-judgmental awareness helps to unravel is the fundamental attribution error. This is our tendency to overemphasize dispositional or personality-based explanations for others' behaviors while underemphasizing situational explanations. In essence, we tend to judge others based on their perceived character while excusing our own actions based on external circumstances. For instance, if a friend arrives late, we might immediately think, they are so inconsiderate. However, if we ourselves are late, we might rationalize it by saying, traffic was terrible, or I had an unexpected emergency. Non-judgmental awareness invites us to observe this double standard within ourselves. When we notice ourselves making a quick, character-based judgment about someone else's actions, we can pause and ask, am I also considering the potential situational factors that might be influencing their behavior? Am I applying the same standards to myself? This self-reflective inquiry, conducted without self-blame but with honest curiosity, helps to foster a more empathetic and nuanced understanding of human behavior, both in others and in ourselves, leading to more compassionate interactions and a greater sense of inner harmony. The true practice begins now, not as a singular event, but as a continuous unfolding. It is in the quiet moments between breaths, in the pause before a reaction, in the simple act of noticing the sensation of being alive, that this profound shift is solidified. It is an invitation to carry this spirit of gentle observation into every facet of our lives, to meet each experience, each person, and each challenge with an open heart and a discerning mind, free from the shackles of habitual judgment. This path is not about achieving a perfect state, but about embracing the imperfect beauty of our unfolding humanity, finding peace not in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of unwavering awareness. The journey inward is the ultimate journey outward, and in this recognition lies the promise of a life lived with greater clarity, deeper connection, and a profound, abiding